and welcome to Discovering Psychology with Philip Zimbardo 1
and Philip Zimbardo 2.
Today we will be discussing how we learn. Through observation and conditioning, there are multiple techniques used to teach and enforce certain behaviors.
There are two main types of conditioning, classical and operant.
Classical conditioning occurs when a certain involuntary response is paired with a stimulus, while operant conditioning occurs when behaviors are controlled by either punishments or reinforcers.
Ivan Pavlov conducted a revolutionary experiment testing the procedure and effects of classical conditioning. He presented food to dogs, initiating their involuntary salivation. He then began to ring a bell directly prior to presenting the dogs with food. And the dogs started to pair the ringing of the bell with the presentation of food.
Pavlov found that the dogs would salivate when hearing the bell, even when food was not given to them. This is called classical conditioning. There are four main components in classical conditioning: unconditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, and conditioned response.
The unconditioned stimulus is the thing that causes an uncontrolled and involuntary response, also known as the unconditioned response. In Pavlov's experiment, the food is the unconditioned stimulus because it causes the dogs to drool instinctively, and the drooling after being presented with the food is the unconditioned response.
The conditioned stimulus is an originally irrelevant stimulus that, after association with an unconditioned stimulus, triggers a conditioned response. A conditioned response is the learned response to the previously neutral but now conditioned stimulus. The bell would be the conditioned stimulus in Pavlov's experiment because at first it didn't cause any reaction from the dogs. After the conditioning took place, it caused the conditioned response of salivating when hearing the bell. In order for classical conditioning to be successful, acquisition must be taken into account. This is when one links a neutral stimulus and an unconditioned stimulus so that the neutral stimulus begins triggering the conditioned response.
The conditioned stimulus must be presented half a second before the unconditioned stimulus. This is shown when the bell is presented to the dogs directly before the food is.
Extinction may occur over time as the dogs continue to eat without hearing the bell again, causing them to not salivate at the sound of the bell anymore.
Spontaneous recovery is the reappearance after a pause of an extinguished conditioned response.
Pavlov found that if he allowed several hours to pass before sounding the bell again, the conditioned response of salivation would reappear spontaneously.
Systematic desensitization is a type of classical conditioning technique that associates a pleasant, relaxed state with gradually increasing anxiety-triggering stimuli. This is often used to treat phobias. For example, if someone has a phobia of dogs,
they would first be shown a picture of a dog while practicing relaxation techniques. Then a dog would be put in the same room. Then it would gradually move closer until they are able to pet it. In order to have positive and negative reinforcement, we must have reinforcers. There are two main types of reinforcers, primary and secondary. Primary reinforcers include food as they satisfy a biological need.
A secondary reinforcer is something that gains its power through association with the primary reinforcer. Money can be used to buy food, so it is a secondary reinforcer.
There are four main partial schedules of reinforcement that are used in operant conditioning: fixed ratio, variable ratio, fixed interval, and variable interval.
Getting one free drink after 5 previously purchased drinks is an example of fixed ratio, since the reinforcement is after a specific number of responses. Gambling is a variable ratio schedule because the reinforcement is after an unpredictable number of responses.
Getting a weekly paycheck is an example of a fixed interval since the reinforcement is given after a predetermined amount of time, while getting an email is a variable interval because the amount of time between emails is unknown.
Another famous experiment was conducted by behaviorist John B. Watson to show that emotional reactions could be classically conditioned in people. He presented a white rat to little Albert, and as he reached out to touch it, Watson struck a hammer against a steel bar. This caused little Albert to become afraid and began to cry.
After 7 repeats of seeing the rat and hearing the loud noise, Albert began to cry at the sight of the rat, even without hearing the sound. This experiment also demonstrated the concept of generalization. Generalization is a tendency for stimuli similar to the conditioned stimulus to produce similar responses.
Watson found that little Albert was also afraid of rabbits, dogs, and seal-skinned coat, all which resembled the white rat. This showed that he lacked discrimination, the ability to distinguish the difference between a conditioned stimulus and a stimulus that does not signal the response. Shaping happens in operant conditioning when a reinforcer gradually guides behavior closer to the desired behavior.
Here we observe a dog learning how to roll over. First he learns how to sit, and is rewarded with a treat. Next, we teach him how to lie down. We will then take it a step farther and teach him to roll onto his back.
Roll over. Roll over.
Not working.
Good boy.
Getting closer to the desired behavior of rolling over. Finally, we teach him to completely roll over.
This demonstrates shaping, based on the step-by-step learning and the reinforcement treat after completing every individual step. Motivation plays a key role in learning, and it can affect the results and success of operant conditioning.
There are two main types of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic motivation is based off of internal rewards, such as personal satisfaction or achievement, while extrinsic motivation is guided by external rewards or punishments.
The over-justification effect occurs when someone is offered an outside reward and it diminishes their previous intrinsic motivation to do it. For example, if dogs are given a reward when they chew their bones, they may become less motivated to chew bones on their own.
In learning and conditioning, individuals that are doing a certain behavior to fulfill intrinsic motivations are more likely to be successful because they are trying to reach a personal goal rather than someone else's. Operant conditioning is the type of learning in which a voluntary behavior is strengthened if followed by a reinforcer, or diminished if followed by a punisher. B.F. Skinner revolutionized modern behaviorism and was a pioneer in operant conditioning. Skinner designed an operant chamber which contained a bar or key that an animal could manipulate to obtain food or water. This box is more commonly known as the Skinner box. Here with us today, we have B.F. Skinner to tell us about his 4 aspects of operant conditioning. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Positive and negative reinforcements and positive and negative punishments are important parts of operant conditioning. Positive reinforcement is presenting a positive stimulus to increase a certain behavior. For example, giving a treat to a dog after they perform a trick. Negative reinforcement is stopping or reducing negative stimuli to increase a certain behavior, like showering to get rid of a bad smell. Positive punishment is presenting a negative consequence after an undesirable behavior, like yelling at a child after they do something wrong. Negative punishment is removing a positive stimulus after an undesirable behavior, like taking away that child's toy.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of Discovering Psychology with Philip Zimbardo.
Down. Roll over. Kaya! Roll over. Good boy! Down. Roll over. Roll over. Roll. Roll over. Skinned coat always resembled the right way. This showed that he lacked discrimination, the ability to distinguish between. What'd you do? I said sealskin coat! This showed that he lacked discrimination, the ability to distinguish between. What'd you do? The white rat. This showed that he lacked discrimination, the ability to distinguish.
Oh my god!